evening, everyone. My name is Emily Egris, and I'm currently a senior at Christopher Newport University. It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Suzanne Scheuble. I had the wonderful opportunity to meet Suzanne and her father and CNU alumnus, Dan, yesterday evening, and I left this experience imbued with passion and encouragement that truly emanate from the inspirational 20-year-old. Suzanne was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, but as you will soon hear, an enormous part of her heart lies in the African country of Ethiopia. While managing a rigorous course load to complete a bachelor's degree in child psychology in only 2 years, Suzanne also provides light to the lives of children who were once shrouded in darkness. Starting from the beginning of her story, that you'll soon hear more about, just over a year ago, on October 2nd, 2015, Suzanne opened the doors to Lantu's Home of Hidden Treasures, the first specialized home for children in Ethiopia. And she has enveloped orphans in a loving and caring embrace that they have never known. As someone who has witnessed devastating poverty in our own Newport News community and abroad, I can say that Suzanne is hope. She is love. She is light, and she is faith. What struck me most about Suzanne is her complete humility and the overwhelming compassion that overflows from her heart. She wholeheartedly embodies the dedication to service that is at the core of CNU and at the core of so many of our hearts, and that shines through the lives of President Tribble and Rosemary. This extraordinary individual with an extraordinary story simultaneously left me speechless, and yet desperate to run to everyone that I know and tell them, one person can make a difference. Suzanne is living a life of significance by ensuring that the lives of the outcast and the abandoned are seen as significant. I invite you tonight to open your hearts to Suzanne's words. Soak in the wisdom and the passion that she will share. And perhaps most importantly, find joy and inspiration in the knowledge that someone who is very much just like each of us in this room is creating a lasting impact in the world and touching the hearts of countless people, just as she very quickly touched mine. Please join me in giving the warmest of CNU welcomes to my dear friend, Miss Suzanne Scheuble.
I didn't have the compassion to embrace someone dying of AIDS or sit at the bedside of a woman struggling to breathe from the effects of tuberculosis. 2 years ago, I didn't have the gentleness to look into the eyes of a child covered in sores and dying of starvation. A year ago, I didn't have the strength to find abandoned and neglected babies and fight to bring them to safety. 6 months ago, I didn't have the forgiveness to love those who tried to stop my mission. But as I look back on my journey and how far that I've come, I now have the courage to embrace the truth that we are all a work in progress, and the only thing stopping us from changing the world and bringing light to the darkness is the fear that we don't have what it takes. This fear can evade every place of hope, every dream and vision that we hold if we allow it to. 3 years ago, I didn't have the compassion to embrace those dying of AIDS and tuberculosis, but I embraced them anyway. 2 years ago, I didn't have the strength to fight for the abandoned, but I fought for them anyway. 6 months ago, I didn't have the forgiveness to love those who tried to stop my mission, but I forgave them anyway, for my belief in love was greater than my weakness. When we begin on this journey to give a voice to those who can't speak, and love the broken and the weary, a courage arises within all of us. A courage to understand our weakness and walk on in spite of the pain we feel, in spite of the sadness we face, in spite of the trials we encounter. A courage to break down walls, walk through fire, and defy every aspect of the word impossible. My name is Suzanne Scheuble, and I'm 20 years old. In 2014, I went on my first trip to Ethiopia. Spending time at several orphanages, I was overcome by the beauty, the immense joy that was hidden in places of hopelessness, as well as the human suffering that was present in the eyes of each child. But the suffering that I saw went beyond their lack of clothes, clean water, proper housing, and suitable food. It was because of this deprivation of basic human resources that created a longing within their souls for someone to know them, someone to understand their pain, someone to embrace their brokenness. Each child looked at me with precious brown eyes that longed for me to understand their pain and walk with them through their journeys of healing. At this point, my mind wanted to believe that my commitment to these children was 10 days, and it would be handing out stickers and candy and sitting with them, coloring and reading. But my heart knew the truth all along. 6 months later, I returned to Ethiopia to do a very specific task of loving and serving orphans at a number of children's homes and homes for people who are sick and dying. Over the time span when I was in America, I had created a fantasy of what I thought orphanages were. Fun, exciting places where there's plenty of food to go around, enough staff to love and care for each child. But this is simply not what I found. My second trip to Ethiopia was a brutal and painful realization that most typical institutions are cruel, dirty, and understaffed models of operation that do little to nothing to attend to the individualized needs of each child. The average caregiver to child ratio is one caregiver for every 9 children. Meals consist of white rice, no protein, and very little vegetables. Faced with the inability to pay the high prices of formula, young babies are often given cow's milk, which causes microbleeding in the intestines and leads to anemia. Children are left to cry for hours on end, and babies are left in cribs, stained with urine and covered in their own vomit. Faced with this cruel reality, I returned home with a heavy and miserable heart that questioned everything about what and who we say love is. But every time my mind or my words would venture to places that articulated what these children were facing, people would reply with a number of at least statements. At least they're not dead. At least they're not on the streets. At least they have some care and some food. But these at least statements diluted to the fact that these people understood there was a problem and still managed to do nothing about it. When we rationalize injustice by emphasizing a worse situation, we are fooling ourselves into believing that we either lack the desire or the will to change it. It is obvious that the desire to make a change exists, as we never would have noticed the injustice in the first place if it didn't. As I showed other people pictures of these precious orphan children I had come to love, their replies were almost consistently the same. They're just like my children. Children are children everywhere. These statements articulating the equality and the equivalent comparison to themselves and their own children were deeply troubling to me. As each statement came, it was followed by an offer of old or used clothing or broken toys they were no longer using. While I was thankful that they had offered anything, these experiences led me to a question. If we as humanity believe that all children are the same, that the impoverished child has just as many rights as any other person, then why do we insist on giving them the things that we don't want, the clothing that we don't wear anymore, or the food that's expired and left over? One could argue that these children would be thankful for anything, but truly it's not a statement about them, it's a question about us. If we believe they have the same level of importance and value as children living here, then why do we provide them with substandard care and leftover items? For 6 months, I carried this concept in my mind, attempting to understand the complexity of what was troubling me. Going to places like Target, I would look at children's clothing and toys, dreaming about a home that provided the orphaned, the abandoned, and the forgotten with the best of everything. Of course, these items alone could never bring true happiness or fulfillment, but it would be the unconditional love that valued them enough to provide for them in this way, to provide for them with things that matched the worth we saw within their souls. I returned to Ethiopia in January of 2015 to find an even deeper deprivation of love than I had left. For the first time in my life, I walked through a darkness where I truly saw no hope. My trip was filled with a series of sleepless nights that consisted of more tears than I could possibly count, an emptiness that destroyed all hope of ever feeling happy again. I would embrace the orphan children that I had loved and known for almost a year, having difficulty to even sing to them without crying. As I looked at their bloody, open sores, I experienced physical pain. As I looked at their deprivation to be held, I experienced emotional and psychological pain. And as I looked upon the emptiness and their longing to be understood, I became one with the spiritual suffering that no longer saw an Ethiopian baby or toddler, but my brother, my sister, my responsibility to give up my life to show the world the value that I saw within all of them. Over the course of the next 8 months, I would partner with a licensed NGO to start my specialized care home, fundraise almost $30,000 in 16 weeks, spend hours speaking with pediatricians and reading research journals on child psychology to write manuals for my future staff members. I would take every penny that I made working and buy the best clothing, shoes, and toys I could possibly find for the children that would live in my home. There were so many times where I felt tired and wanted to give up. But I was constantly faced with the concept that these children don't get that choice. If they feel tired, unwanted, and misunderstood, they don't get a choice to have another life. So why should I have that choice? But through the pain I was facing and being misunderstood, I learned many lessons that would carry me into a destiny that was greater than anything I had ever imagined. There was also several children who were truly guiding lights along the path to accomplish this mission. The first was a little boy named Gideon. I first heard about him from the orphanage director in October of 2014. He was a 5-month-old abandoned baby with a massive cyst on the side of his head from a traumatic brain injury. After his condition was misdiagnosed several times within Ethiopia, we received his medical reports and began searching for options to help this baby in America. There were so many people who told us that it was impossible, as his surgery would cost over $500,000. But my mom never gave up on this little boy. Around 5 months after we met this baby, a children's hospital with one of the best pediatric neurosurgery departments in the country agreed to do this $500,000 surgery for free. 3 months later, we traveled to Ethiopia to pick him up, thinking our commitment to him was 6 weeks. After a successful brain surgery, it was determined that he would need extensive physical and occupational therapy to regain the ability to move the left side of his body. My parents, who were in their late 50s, despite negative opinions and opposition, decided to adopt this baby to give him a life he could never have in Ethiopia, as he had been completely abandoned and without therapy would be disabled on the streets for the rest of his life. His name is now Christopher. He is 2 years old and he is the joy of our lives. His love is greater than his weakness. People oftentimes undermine your vision and dreams because they're insecure with their own lack of faith regarding the dreams that they hold. When people told them that they couldn't accomplish their goals, they believed it, So now faced with the same situation, they will attempt to belittle, discredit, and hurt the confidence you hold. It's your choice. You can choose to live the life that you were created to live, changing the world every day with your compassion, your peace, your gentleness, your love. Or you can listen to those who say it can never be done, even though they've never tried to live out their own mission, let alone yours. You have a passion that will inspire the world. You have a dream that will bring light to the darkness. You have a song that only you have the ability to sing. In September of 2015, I went back to Ethiopia for the 5th time in 2 years with 2 of my friends who were also 19 like me to start this specialized care home for 15 special needs children and abandoned babies. In 3 months, we created a home that defied every institutional norm with a staff ratio of 1 trained caregiver for every 2 to 3 children, nutritious meals consisting of protein, grains, and vegetables, and a budget that allowed for the purchase of baby formula. And most importantly, the existence of unconditional love that these children had never felt before. In visiting this home, people were surprised to find an orphanage where everyone had enough to eat. Each baby and child had their own comfortable bed and clean blankets, and each staff member was trained and attentive to the needs of each child. I have been back several times since it's opened. The caregivers never cease to amaze me with their love, their gentleness, patience, and joy towards these children. The home has been open for almost a year, and it is just as beautiful as the day that we started. However, there are many points on this journey to reach the poorest of the poor where we fall short of understanding why. Why spend hundreds of hours working tirelessly, thanklessly to bring compassion to the oppressed if they can never do anything for you in return? A few months ago, while spending a month in Ethiopia, I was suffering through these questions to myself, wondering if I had the courage to press forward in my mission, feeling a calling to expand my efforts even further. I walked into the gates of another orphanage. This orphanage was nothing like my orphanage. It was cold, broken, paint peeling off the walls, flies endlessly buzzing around babies, children covered in sores and laying in their own urine and vomit for hours on end, and staff barely noticing the misery of any of these children, let alone a 6-year-old boy laying in a crib having constant seizures. I ventured behind the first set of rooms to find 7 newborn babies living in a room as dark and damp as a closet. It was immediately evident that they spent every waking moment in this dirty, wet, pitch-black room. Still wrestling with deep questions of doubt in my mission, I came to the first crib, finding a 3-month-old abandoned baby girl innocently looking up at me. As I took her outside and she looked up into the sky as though she had never seen sunlight, I was immediately overcome by my own selfishness. I didn't need a reason why I would continue to walk on this journey to reach the forgotten. I didn't need a reason, I didn't need an answer to my questions because I was holding the reason. Our world is filled with opportunities, choices to make, but our greatest opportunity is to be a compassion to the broken, a friend to the lonely, peace to the restless, joy to the sorrowful. There is no greater mission, no deeper calling than the opportunity that is given to our hearts, each one of us, each day. I serve these people because when I look at them, I see Christ, and I'm drawn to live out a vision that was painted in my heart by God. But it doesn't matter if we all have different religions or the same, for we're all united in one common mission to love the poorest of the poor, be a voice for the unheard, a shelter for the weak, and a friend to the forgotten. For we have many opportunities in life, but our greatest is to live out this invitation to find treasures in the most broken places. The lonely, the broken, the unwanted, they are the treasures of this world. They are our opportunity to love far beyond ourselves and reach into the deepest place in our hearts to find compassion and courage we didn't know was there. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't change this world. You have a dream that belongs to only you. You have a mission that can only be fulfilled by your efforts. There are people in this world counting on your kindness. They are waiting to understand true mercy through your acts of love. They are waiting to know that they are valued through your smile, your kindness, your peace. There will be people who will try to stop you, tell you that you do not understand the complexity of the mission that you're undertaking. The greater the dream, the stronger the opposition will be. These people can discredit you, they can discourage you, they can talk about you, they can laugh at you, but they cannot stop you unless you let them. In June, in Ethiopia, I was walking to my orphanage like I did every morning. There was an older woman sitting on the side of the road asking for food to those who passed by. She wore torn and tattered clothing, her shoeless feet covered in infected wounds, and her trembling body sitting in a muddy ditch where people throw their trash. For the first few days, I gave this woman food. I handed it to her and walked away. But as I walked away, I could feel her eyes following me. The third day, she took the food, but this time she grabbed my hand tightly and pulled me down beside her. She began to cry to me in her native language, and I initially thought, I can't understand this woman. What good would it be for me to listen to her? But as I looked deep within her soul, with tears running down her face, I understood my inability to understand her words did not disqualify me from being the face of mercy, the presence of unconditional love she was really longing for. The truth is, I wanted to give her food because I thought it would soothe her soul, when she needed something much deeper. Someone to sit beside her, someone to love her, someone to let her know that her pain did not go unnoticed. I could only speculate the story that brought her to this place of sadness, this place of brokenness and pain, but her suffering could be easily seen and understood. There are so many people in our world like this woman. We walk by them, or we give them the bare minimum of what we have, like I did, when they long for so much more. A presence of mercy, the face of compassion, a heart devoted to their well-being. Sometimes our greatest disappointments lead us to our greatest miracles. Last year, one of our orphanage's babies was in the hospital. While I was caring for him there, I found out that a month-old abandoned baby was living at this same hospital. He had been abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road, and the police didn't know what to do with him, so they brought him to the hospital and left him there. I immediately tried to figure a way to bring this baby into my orphanage. We pursued this multiple times, but the baby never came. When I went back in June, I went back to this hospital to try to find out what happened to that baby. I found the doctor who told me about the baby originally. She shared with me the devastating news that this baby had been taken to another orphanage, which I knew was the dirtiest, most run-down orphanage in town. But in seeing the devastation in my face, she told me about another little girl who had been abandoned there a week ago. I asked if I could see her. She led me into a hospital room filled with numerous young children, coughing endlessly, covered in sweat and struggling to breathe. In the first bed lay the most beautiful 2-year-old girl I had ever seen. Her body so malnourished and weak she couldn't even move, yet she had the strength to look up at me and smile. I immediately started planning ways I could get back to that hospital to care for her. I bought some diapers and formula and planned to take them on separate days so I could justify numerous visits to the hospital staff. A few days later, one of my babies from my orphanage began having violent seizures. I immediately took him to the hospital, and he was assigned to the bed right next to the precious little girl I was visiting. Now, actually having a legitimate reason to be there every day, I began to bring her juice and care for her along with the caregivers from my orphanage. Her cerebral palsy made it difficult for her to drink, and the juice ran out of her mouth. Other people in the hospital room had never seen a child with disabilities like her, therefore they began to laugh. The caregivers from my orphanage, with so much gentleness and love, explained the little girl's condition and that despite her disability, she was no different than any other little girl. The people who were laughing immediately felt silent and looked at her with deep compassion and love. The people in the ones originally laughing, began taking turns holding her and feeding her. Although many of them were there with their own children who were sick and dying, they sacrificed their time to extend love to a child that they once misunderstood and even considered worthless. After 3 months of requesting and completion of paperwork, Worki, which means gold in Amharic, came to live at my orphanage. She has been there for almost 3 weeks now and is doing wonderful under the care and attention of the caregivers who were once her voice. How can we be more like those caregivers? They had no reason to be a voice for this baby. They didn't know her. They were from the same culture of the people laughing at her, yet they believed that love was greater than any weakness they have. I have come to believe that the weak were created to lead the strong. The brokenness of the vulnerable exists to test the integrity of the powerful. If you want to lead people, you must treat the poor with the same level of respect, the same level of compassion, and the same level of value as you do the influential. You must serve those who can do nothing for you in the same way that you serve those who do everything for you. Those who are truly great understand the worth of the poor, the forgotten, the lonely, and the broken. For they are teachers of mercy, teachers of compassion, teachers of gentleness, joy, and patience. And without these attributes, you have no true power to lead. For while leadership roles and opinions change, your character can never be taken away from you. In 9 months, I will be permanently moving to Ethiopia upon the completion of my bachelor's degree in child psychology to start a new non-governmental organization. My vision is to see over 100 children who were once forgotten, once unloved, once broken, living in the most beautiful homes, receiving the most individualized care, attention, and nutrition, receiving the best of everything as they have the same worth and value as any other child. This project will consist of 3 more orphan homes like the one that I started, with only 10 to 12 children in each, special needs and healthy, in each housing unit to create a more home-like atmosphere. Our project will also have a daycare for single impoverished children or mothers to bring their children just during the daytime, allowing them to attend technical college, which we will sponsor, as well as parenting classes, business classes, and life skills training. During the time at the daycare, these children can receive meals, vitamins, early childhood education, as well as the benefit of their mother becoming self-sufficient and independently be able to raise them. We will also give parents who have special needs children the opportunity to take classes on how to properly care for the children while providing formula, wheelchairs, medical sponsorship, and orthopedic equipment to these children within the community. I understand the complexity of the mission I am undertaking, but I believe that love can change this world. I believe that you can change this world, because it simply starts with the belief that no weakness can minimize the power that lies within a heart committed to bringing light to every place of darkness. Every day we have the opportunity to love far beyond ourselves and reach the forgotten, the unwanted, and the unloved all around us. In denying our own needs to assist the weak, in being a voice for the oppressed and peace for the restless, we find a destiny and a freedom that we never thought possible. Thank you.